Reggae Interviews. Word sound power.
I remember the first time I walked in here and I walked through the gate and it was Diane Jobson. We went and we found Diane, who met me at the gate, and she's like, "Oh my God, it's a little girl that wants Tastee." And the first thing she goes like, "Bob." So I remember vividly walking in here and seeing Bob, and I've been telling someone that the memories of Bob now, I sit down and I deliberately go through them over in my head so that they be etched in my mind forever. So I remember him in really dark denim. And I walked up to him and she said, "Bob," obviously he must have known because it was his plan to, I think, what I heard, the reason why he was doing this was that him coming up in the music industry was very, very hard and harsh. You know, the Jamaica music industry in the 60s was harsh. So he felt that he reached a stage in his career and he wanted to facilitate like a better journey for young artists. And I benefited from that. So there I was, and I stood up, and I remember seeing him gorgeous. Like years after, I said to myself, I understand why the women love Bob Marley so much. He was beautiful. So he just smiled. And everybody know when Bob smiled, there was a childlike quality. And then I'm there standing, and I'm looking at him. I must say I wasn't too impressed. You know, as a little kid, I was like an 11-year-old kid. The enormity of the situation, you know, like years after when I went to UN, I did Bob Marley, I recognized like, dude, man, I really was around the king. And that was it. You know, I met him then and the machinery just started. It was close to Christmas, so we never really did anything at that time. But as 1980 dawned, I started rehearsing and did my first song, Starvation on the Land, which he was there also in the studio. I didn't come here for many, many years. Okay. Many years I wasn't here. You get caught up in life. And I came here as a student. When I did my master's, I came here as a cultural studies student. And part of it was to tour the Bob Marley Museum. And I was like touring it and I started to cry. And I was just like trying to tell kids that was half my age. I was like, "Mommy." I was in school the first semester and I was telling them that this was my life and my childhood and everything. So I always hold the memory dear to me, you know. I'm just like thinking, yeah, a lot of my childhood running up and down here with Ziggy and Sidella and Sharon and Stephen and Rowan. You know, it's just like spending time here.
Yeah. Now, you were the first artist that was signed to the Tough Gong recording label. And your debut single that you mentioned, Starvation on the Land. What do you remember about that recording session? Because, I mean, first of all, when you actually analyse the lyrics in that song, it shows a very, very deep sense of maturity. Was that a song that you wrote yourself or was it written for you?
That song was written for me and almost got an 11-year-old kid in trouble, okay, people? It was written by Sangie, a Rastafari. Bob assigned him the task of my project, you know, Nadine Sutherland project. And I remember like coming here, the back now, coming here in a room with Sangie, playing the guitar, learning the song. He wrote the lyrics, and, you know, it's Rastaman and all of that. Unfortunately, it was released in 1980 in the cups of when Jamaica was, I call it the Civil War, when JLP and PMP was fighting. I didn't even know what I was singing. And then I heard after that some people actually took umbrage of the lyrical content because they felt that it was a critique against the current government.
Okay.
So an 11-year-old kid would know that, right? I was just singing that song. And I remember the first recording that I've ever done. I was in my uniform, which, you know, after that, you know, I was told not to wear your school uniform. But we just never knew. We were just starting the music industry. Me and my father and my parents, everybody just excited. Everybody just like totally awed by the whole situation. Here I am, starry-eyed, seeing people running up and down and everybody thing there. And then all I knew, Sangie come in and, you know, I couldn't see over where the console is very well. But I remember sitting down and I'm standing there, and who walked in was the gong himself, Bob.
Okay.
Yeah, he was at my first recording, and he came and was like, "Put up on a chair now," and they put me on a chair, and I was like, totally. And then Sangie come and instruct, and Steely and Clevie, the the people who were the beginning of dancehall, those two young men, they were in the session playing reggae music. Yeah. I think Steely was playing the piano, and Steely was playing the live drums. In Starvation on the Land, it's Steely and Clevie, excuse me, who played it. And Bob came in and said, I don't remember who he spoke to, but I know he said he made some musical suggestions. And I remember, you know, I think it was a bass or guitar, he made some suggestions. And then when I could see a little, because I wasn't even thinking that the console was over there, but I saw him walking up and down, talking and all of that. And then I realized that his presence was there. And then when I love to think that when I listen to Starvation, it kind of have a Whalers feel. Tam, ta, 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 tam. I was like, it have a Whalers feeling because yeah. So my first recording, that was it. That was my experience. Yeah.
Now, a lot of people, and it's been very well documented, that as far as music is concerned, Bob was a perfectionist. Did you sort of see some of those elements of that perfectionism in what you were doing here?
Definitely. A lot of people don't understand. Like even before I perform and I get into this zone, talk to me after I perform. And if I'm gonna perform, I always remember one thing. Bob always said, if it's 10 people, you perform like it's a million.
True.
So when I'm on stage, I give my all. Those are the training. And I wasn't around Bob, but I was around Rita and his children. And I remember in my younger days when we are going on tour, it wasn't like 1 or 2 rehearsals. It was weeks of rehearsals, weeks of getting your clothes together, weeks of getting your act together. They approached it from the way that Bob approached it. His children had, even when the Melody Makers, they had a level of professionalism that was taught from the school of Bob Marley. And I still have it in me. Some musicians can't deal with me because I'm like, do it over and over because I'm not going to go on stage with anything that is mediocre. As my father said, I'm from the school of Bob Marley. So when I go on stage, I give my all as a performer. Where I want my music, when I am performing, when I'm going into my zone, I want it to be the best. Don't come talk to me. Yes, I will talk to you after, but I have to get my headspace because I'm going out there. My voice have to be, I can't be using my voice all the time, and I have to sing and hit my notes. And my energy, I have to dance, and I have to, you see how I dance, but it is from the schooling, as my father would say. My father is a Rasta man, and all the teachings of being in that camp, the legacy of Bob Marley and how he approached the seriousness, how he approached his work, still is manifested in me, and how I approach everything, because that's the same kind of stuff I approached even being a student. Anything that I do, I approach it from a level of discipline and making sure that everything is done properly. All this work was done at Tough Gong. All of this work. You see, when Bob passed on, he had all these plans. Even how late my album was released until was because of Bob transitioned, and after he transitioned, the whole thing with this place being changed, and Mrs. Marley, at the helm and ensuring that this album was made. So it's a lot of history. I was telling Ryan when Bob transitioned and I used to come here. When I used to come here, I hated after a while coming here because I felt the walls of this place was crying. I felt the sorrow. The sorrow was in the walls. That's just like this life force was taken away, and the joy and the life was just like taken away from this place. And I felt it as an 11-year-old, although, not an 11, like 12, 13, although I couldn't process it. You could feel it. You feel it. It felt so bad that I didn't, it was just like when I came here, this overwhelming sadness that came over me because everybody was just like overwhelmed with sadness because the life force. When, I was talking to somebody also, and I saw this thing that chronicled Bob when he got shot, and when he went away, and was saying that how many people from the opposing gangs were here, and I never even knew. I was living it. My father would be like, say the Monday one PNP, say, and no, we say shatter, I saw shatter, and then as a little kid, so I can say that's how this place buzzed. Journalists were here, people were here to see Bob. When Bob was there, the whole energy shifted in this place. I remember seeing people, throngs of people lining up Hope Road to this gate, coming get to people for come for them things a weekend from Bob. I've seen a lot of stuff, and like when I see stuff about Bob, I can say, yeah, I actually can put the pieces together as a child with the truth of who that man was. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing, because I remember one man called Lip, driving a BMW, and I heard that Bob gave the two warring factions, PMP and GLP, Don heads them, give them each a BMW, and I just saw a lot of things as a child, which I can't put the pieces now, especially as a cultural studies student. So it's true. Yeah.
Reggae Interviews. Word Sound Power.